Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Huo Yuhao was floating in mid-air as he waited for Liao Menkai's arrival. This person did not unleash his martial soul. This was something Huo Yuhao had accurately determined. Normally, even soul engineers would first unleash their martial souls in battle to either strengthen or support their attacks. At the end of the day, any kind of boost would be better than nothing. Huo Yuhao had only seen one other person who relied purely on his soul power and soul tool. That person was none other than Ji Juechen. However, Huo Yuhao was able to tell that this person was treading on a different path from Ji Juechen. If he was planning to attack in a similar way as Ji Juechen, he would not have his human-shaped soul tool. His blades would have sufficed. The light from his matte black blades intersected each other in the air as they formed a cross that sped towards Huo Yuhao. The sharpness of his blades gave off the impression that the cross would be unstoppable. Huo Yuhao raised the morning dew dagger in his hand as the blade of the dagger instantly released an icy blue glow. The glow stabbed right into the center of the cross. The matte black light from the blades paused before turning white. Following which, they disintegrated into the air like the morning mist. Liao Menkai's heart sank after watching this. It was one thing to spectate Huo Yuhao's battle with the 5 evil soul masters, and another thing to be up against him in person. Liao Menkai could not seem to sense any pressure from Huo Yuhao's body. It was almost as though he did not have any aura at all. However, this only served to put more pressure on Liao Menkai. After all, he had seen how Huo Yuhao had taken down 5 transcendent Doluo consecutively with his own eyes. The thought of going up against someone like Huo Yuhao crushed his morale as his battle intent weakened. After the first probing collision ended, Liao Menkai appeared before Huo Yuhao at the very next moment. He had positioned one of his blades to the front and the other to his back as he slashed both of them towards Huo Yuhao. Soul engineers rarely used their martial soul true body, as it would affect the effects of their soul tools. However, it was even more rare to see people like him, who did not even unleash his own martial soul. The sharp light from his blades was easily parried by Huo Yuhao's morning dew dagger. At the same time, Huo Yuhao lifted his land hand as a streak of dark blue sword light came towards Liao Menkai. Unparalleled chill, Empress Sword. Liao Menkai was the only person who could sense the chill that was traveling down his spine. Huo Yuhao had long been able to concentrate his ultimate ice after understanding the intricacies of the element of ice. Liao Menkai's figure flickered as his entire body became a little illusory. Poof! A soft sound could be heard as the unparalleled chill turned the black figure into an ice sculpture before the sculpture started to fall from the sky. However, another black figure had appeared on the other side of Huo Yuhao as it surged towards him with its brightly illuminated blade. Huo Yuhao moved his body and teleported away instantly. However, the black figure also vanished at that very instant. In addition, Huo Yuhao found himself unable to locate the person's position even with his spiritual detection. Huh? Could this be? Huo Yuhao was visibly startled by what he had just witnessed. Until now, Liao Menkai had not even unleashed his martial soul. Hence, his teleportation ability must have been granted to him by a soul tool. Could the human-shaped soul tool he is wearing now possess the ability to teleport? No, it can't be this simple. From the look of things, it's almost as if he completely vanished. It's not the same as teleportation. This means that his human-shaped soul tool must possess some sort of ability, which is very similar to spatial power. That would be insane. While Huo Yuhao was trying to understand Liao Menkai's power, a figure had suddenly appeared behind him. The figure was wielding a black blade, which was giving off a menacing black glow. Because Huo Yuhao had been enveloping the entire battlefield with his spiritual detection, he was able to react instantly. The icy war god's armor immediately emitted a layer of dark blue light. When that matte black blade glow came near the icy war god's armor, it was almost as if it had sunk into a marsh. It instantly stopped as an extremely cold aura immediately attacked the black figure. The effects of Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice were always present. Even though he had become a lot more conservative with it, and had not released his snowy dance of ultimate ice again, he was still able to unleash the power of ultimate ice on his opponent by just activating his intent. Without hesitating at all, the black light flickered, and Liao Menkai vanished again. In that short instant, Huo Yuhao's morning dew dagger was about to stab into Liao Menkai, but he vanished in the nick of time. This was exactly how assassins liked to fight. After failing to land their blows, they would immediately retreat to prepare for their next blow. Of course, Huo Yuhao was able to instantly understand what Liao Menkai wanted to do. It appeared that Liao Menkai had the same plan as Zhongli Wu. Both of them wanted to expend his power. They wanted to use their various methods to burn his spiritual power and soul power. What a good move! Huo Yuhao revealed a cold smile. It might be very demanding for me to deal with Zhongli Wu. But do you really think it will be demanding for me to deal with you? A soul engineer who has not even reached rank 95. You might have a human-shaped soul tool, but I have one too. On top of that, there are some things I have which you do not possess. Huo Yuhao gradually raised the morning dew dagger in his hand until it rose above his head. The dark blue glow on the icy war god's armor suddenly weakened, before it intensified and illuminated the area around him. After sensing this extremely intense cold, Liao Menkai, who had just reappeared next to Huo Yuhao, immediately went back into the void without any hesitation. Huo Yuhao slashed his morning dew dagger outwards. At that instant, no one could see exactly what he was doing. His entire body was like a dark blue ball of light, where countless streaks of light were radiating from his body. At that instant, everything within 1,000 meters of him was enveloped in a piercing blade light. The icy blue light ripped apart all space easily. This was obviously an indiscriminate attack. Even when he was up against Zhongli Wu, Huo Yuhao had not unleashed such an attack. What kind of technique is this? Fortunately, Ji Juechen was not present. If not, the sword fanatic would definitely bug Huo Yuhao to spar with him after this battle. He would not have cared even if he were to lose. After Huo Yuhao had unleashed this technique, the entire sky had changed color, and now revealed a radiant picture. It was as though a gigantic icy blue dragon was flying in the sky. Every single scale on the dragon's body was immensely clear. Is this something a sword technique is supposed to be able to achieve? Everyone from Tang's sect was startled by what they had just witnessed. None of them knew when exactly Huo Yuhao had mastered this technique. After all, this technique did not belong to the Doluo continent. It was passed on to Huo Yuhao by a god. Rain Dragon's Dance. This was the first time Huo Yuhao was using this technique on the battlefield. At the instant he unleashed this technique, he felt as though the soul power stored within his yin-yang complement soul cores was being gulped down furiously by the morning dew dagger. The black figure was forced out from his hiding spot within the void as Liao Menkai frantically waved his blades before him to protect himself. Nonetheless, he could not help but sustain 13 cuts on his body. His Class 9 protective soul barrier was shattered. His invincible barrier was also shattered. One could also see the streaks of icy blue light that were left on his human-shaped soul tool. The piercing cold instantly penetrated his human-shaped soul tool and went straight into his bones. Even though his human-shaped soul tool was also Class 9, its defensive ability could not be compared to the frightening power of the morning dew dagger. The formation arrays within the Class 9 human-shaped soul tool were instantly destroyed by the blade light. If he had not been wearing an additional suit of Class 9 inner armor, he would have turned into an ice sculpture. It was frightening, simply too frightening. What kind of dagger technique could shred space over 2,000 meters? Huo Yuhao was somehow able to restrain himself and only use it now. How many trump cards does he actually possess? The powerful soul engineers and soul masters from the Sun Moon Empire could not help but tremble as they watched Huo Yuhao unleash that technique. However, they did not know that he was also regretting what he had just done. Even though the Rain Dragon's Dance was able to startle everyone, it demanded too much from him. He realized how much soul power he had lost just because of that technique. Even the powerful regenerative ability of the yin-yang complement soul cores was not able to compensate for the soul power he had spent. It took almost 30 seconds before the sky started to lose its peculiar appearance after it was carved and torn into the shape of a dragon. Now, the sky had turned into a sea of ultimate ice. It was clear how much soul power Huo Yuhao had expended to achieve this feat. Die! A loud howl escaped from Liao Menkai's mouth. Following which, two long matte black blades were released in Huo Yuhao's direction. They sped towards him like lightning, while Liao Menkai started to drop towards the ground from the sky. Everyone knew there was only one reason why a person would toss out his or her weapon in the middle of a battle. This was because the person wanted to create an opportunity to escape. Even though a Class 9 Soul Engineer might not be able to match a top-class Soul Master when it came to fighting power, their ability to survive was definitely a lot stronger than that of a Soul Master. If it were a Soul Master with an equal, or even higher cultivation, than Liao Menkai, who was on the receiving end of Huo Yuhao's Rain Dragon's dance, he or she would have already been shredded to pieces. However, Liao Menkai was still alive. Two matte black blades instantly appeared before Huo Yuhao one after another. The blades were staggered by a single meter. A serious look immediately formed on Huo Yuhao's face. In fact, from his first battle until now, he had not revealed an expression this serious. Huo Yuhao raised his morning dew dagger to deflect the first black blade. Following which, he did something which no one was unable to understand. He tilted his body slightly, as he used his left shoulder to take on the attack of the second blade. TSKK. The long blade pierced through his shoulder instantly. Even the powerful defensive ability of the Icy War God's armor was unable to block the blade. However, Huo Yuhao's shoulder did not seem to be bleeding. He simply stumbled before he fell from the sky. Tang Wutong immediately panicked after seeing him fall. She was about to dash over to catch him when she saw him raise his right hand and signal her not to come over. Following which, two loud thuds could be heard. Liao Menkai and Huo Yuhao had crashed into the ground one after another. When Liao Menkai landed, his body fell forward in an unsightly manner before he rolled over into a sitting position. On the other hand, Huo Yuhao landed in an extremely steady manner. However, the blade in his shoulder made him look very frightening. Ha 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 ha. It seems like you were shot down by my blade. Liao Menkai let out a burst of laughter. He was obviously very pleased with himself for successfully harming Huo Yuhao, a feat which not even Zhongli Wu had managed to do. Huo Yuhao nodded at Liao Menkai. He said, I never expected to see someone like you who would dedicate your life to perfecting a single art. If I had not been watching you and sensing when you would release your martial soul, I would probably have been in a worse state. You were actually able to ignite your own life energy, to freeze the flow of my internal energy. If I am not wrong, your martial soul should be a blade, right? Liao Menkai nodded. He was impressed by how Huo Yuhao was able to deduce all of this during the battle. That's right. My martial soul is a blade. To be more precise, it is a blade soul. My blade soul does not possess a true physical form. It is quite different from the usual weapon martial souls which you probably see. However, it is able to fuse into any metallic object perfectly. When I had just started to cultivate it, it was extremely weak and powerless. However, as I became stronger, I started to realize how powerful and useful it is. Huo Yuhao continued, even though your previous attack looked as though it was intended to prevent me from going after you, you had actually fused your martial soul into your second blade while you burned your life energy to restrict the flow of energy within my body. The first blade was meant to be a distraction, as you had simply thrown it over in a fairly normal fashion. It seemed like you must have consumed a lot of tonics and herbs to strengthen your life energy. Yes. In fact, I actually unleashed my 9th soul skill earlier. It is called Soul-Splitting Blade. If I am to be honest, you are doomed. From the moment my blade entered your body, you were bound to die even if you were to chop off your limb. After all, my demonic god blade is a Class 9 soul tool. The other blade is a Class 9 soul tool. By using my soul-splitting blade to enhance my Class 9 soul tool, it is essentially indestructible. Even if you were an ultimate Doluor, you would still die, because your passageways would be severed by the destructive energy, which will ravage your body. To be honest, I don't think I would have been able to freeze the flow of your internal energy, if you had not fought so many people beforehand. After releasing that powerful technique of yours which exposed my location, you had expended too much power, and became vulnerable to my technique. Huo Yuhao nodded and said, I admit that I have underestimated you. This is the price I have to pay for doing that. However, I want to remind you not to overestimate the power of your blade soul. Even though it can hurt me, it will not be that easy to kill me. As he spoke, Huo Yuhao gripped the hilt of the demonic god blade with his right hand as he slowly pulled the 5-foot blade out from his shoulder. Right now, Tang Wutong no longer dared to watch Huo Yuhao. Her fists were clenched as she wished she was the one in his place. However, Huo Yuhao did not allow her to go over. After all, this battle against 10 opponents was a battle which was exclusively his. It was a man's battle. Liao Menkai was startled to see Huo Yuhao removing the blade from his shoulder. He did not expect him to possess the energy to remove the blade. What? This can't be happening. Why do you still have the strength? Shouldn't you have used all of your soul power to suppress my blade soul? Why do you still have the strength to remove the blade? Liao Menkai had already ignited his life energy, and used every single ounce of energy in his soul power to launch an all-out attack. Even though his attack was successful, its effects fell short of his expectations. How could he still be able to remove the long blade? There was actually another reason why Liao Menkai was willing to go out and challenge Huo Yuhao today. He was, in fact, driven by his greed. He wanted Huo Yuhao's morning dew dagger. As a powerful fighter who possessed a blade soul, he believed that he ought to be able to control the morning dew dagger even if he did not possess an ultimate ice martial soul. He believed that he had a good chance of becoming a transcendent Doluor if he were to couple his blade soul with the godly weapon. It was important to note that one could only become a Class 10 soul engineer after attaining the abilities of a transcendent Doluor. This was something he had been dreaming of for a long time. Liao Menkai watched Huo Yuhao slowly remove the 5-foot blade without spilling a single drop of blood. However, because Huo Yuhao had a visor over his face, no one could see his expression. Nonetheless, everyone believed that he was not in that much pain, since he was able to extract the blade in a fairly steady manner. Finally, the entire demonic god blade was removed by Huo Yuhao. His body trembled a little as he held the Class 9 soul tool in his hand. The demonic god blade only had a single characteristic, its extreme sharpness. Similar to how Liao Menkai went after the extreme in his fighting style, it was the same for his weapon. It was so sharp that even the icy war god's armor was unable to block it. Powered by his blade soul, the attacking power which was unleashed by the demonic god blade at that instant was almost on par with that of a godly weapon. If Huo Yuhao had reacted slower and treated it as a normal attack, his heart would have been pierced by the demonic god blade. How were you able to do that? Liao Menkai asked Huo Yuhao in a dazed manner. Huo Yuhao wielded the demonic god blade in a reverse grip, as he used the side of his palm to lift his visor. Even though his face appeared to be a little pale, Huo Yuhao revealed a calm and composed expression. I have kept you alive until now just so that I can show you how useless your attack is on me. You had no chance of killing me at all. Now, it's time for you to vanish from the surface of this earth. Please show mercy. Zhu Zi exclaimed from her seat. However, this was the battlefield. There was no room for mercy in war. Boom. An intense explosion could be heard. Liao Menkai's body had exploded into pieces. Even till his last breath, his eyes were still widened in disbelief. Liao Menkai had ignited his life energy, and given up on defending his body to launch his final attack. In fact, he had injected all his soul power into the weapon, and used his other soul tool to conceal the glow of his soul ring in order to unleash such a deadly blow. However, why was his enemy still alive? By banking everything on his final attack, it implied that he had completely given up on defending himself. However, the truth was that all of his passive defensive measures had already been shredded by the Rain Dragon's dance executed by Huo Yuhao's morning dew dagger. By the time Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice had permeated into Liao Mengkai's body, and he had fallen to the ground, he was already seriously injured. Most of the passageways in his body were already frozen solid. Under such circumstances, the ice explosion was definitely all that was required to deal the finishing blow. Huo Yuhao gradually turned around to face the Sun Moon Empire's army. He stabbed the 5-foot-long demonic god blade into the ground as he used it to support his body. Suddenly, he let out a serious cough as 2 streaks of blood shot out from his left shoulder like arrows. After leaving Huo Yuhao's body, these 2 streaks of blood formed the shape of a blade as they turned around to attack Huo Yuhao. A golden light immediately shone from Huo Yuhao's forehead and enveloped the bloody blade soul. Following which, the blade soul exploded silently before vanishing into thin air. The blood stopped flowing from Huo Yuhao's shoulder. It had only left some bloodstains on Huo Yuhao's icy war god's armor. He remained standing there as though nothing had happened. Next. The blood did not make him look vulnerable or weak. In fact, it made him look a lot more intimidating. The contrast of the blood against his pale, cold face made him look like a devil who had just descended onto their land. 6th. This was already the 6th person. Huo Yuhao was able to win all 6 battles with his superior abilities. He had killed 3, injured 2, and captured 1. If Juzi was not exactly very upset by the Holy Ghost Church's failure earlier, it pained her to see the Legion commander of the Terraclaw Soul Engineer Legion fall. After all, Liao Mengkai was a Class 9 Soul Engineer. On top of that, he was the Legion commander of a Soul Engineer Legion. It usually took a couple of decades to nurture a talent like him. Every Class 9 Soul Engineer like Liao Mengkai was a strategic resource of the Sun Moon Empire. Juzi was starting to understand why Huo Yuhao had suggested this challenge. He was not only trying to force the Sun Moon Empire into a retreat, but also trying to reduce the Sun Moon Empire's power while improving his own abilities. Even though Juzi could not control the Holy Ghost Church, the Holy Ghost Church was still on the side of the Sun Moon Empire. Under Huo Yuhao's ruthless attacks, the Holy Ghost Church had sustained huge losses. Now, they were starting to lose their soul engineers. Even though the Sun Moon Empire had quite a few Class 9 soul engineers, they were still very limited. They did not have more than 20 Class 9 soul engineers, even including those who were initiated in recent years. However, Huo Yuhao and his peers had already taken down more than 1. On top of that, it also pained Juzi to see Huo Yuhao injured. Right now, Huo Yuhao's breathing was slightly labored. It was evident that his injury was not light at all. Liao Mengkai's final attack was something he really had not expected. It was the first time he had seen such a powerful all-out attack. Liao Mengkai's attack was built on extreme sharpness. Hence, every single attribute which he possessed was developed with that consideration in mind. His invincibly sharp soul tool was greatly enhanced by his blade soul to an incredibly frightening extent. By the time Huo Yuhao was able to sense its insane power with his spiritual detection, he immediately knew that there was no chance he would be able to block that blade. Hence, he instantly used his ultimate ice to freeze and protect the passageways in his left shoulder to attempt to block it. At the end of the day, his icy war god's armor was still effective at defending him. It was able to negate about 50% of the blade soul's power. After the remaining power had entered his body, it had started to try to ravage his body in a furious manner. Just as Liao Mengkai had predicted, it had tried to shred everything within his body to pieces. Fortunately, Huo Yuhao possessed his yin-yang complement soul cores. With the nourishment they provided, Huo Yuhao's body had gained strength that put it on par with Di Qian's. The soul power vortex in his body had played a big role in preventing Liao Mengkai's energy from tearing his body apart. Huo Yuhao's soul power vortex was able to lock onto the blade soul before forcing it into a corner with its continuous rotation. This prevented the blade soul from hurting his vital organs. Nonetheless, he still fell to the ground because he had trouble controlling his body in that moment. Eventually, he managed to use his soul power to force the blade soul out of his body. In fact, the entire process was extremely risky. If he had not formed his yin-yang complement soul cores before this challenge, Liao Menkai's attack would have been fatal. He would have died instantly. However, Huo Yuhao did not emerge from this costly battle without any benefits. While he sustained a serious injury, he gained a better understanding of his yin-yang complement soul cores and their useful effects. However, the truth was that performing the Rain Dragon's dance with the Morning Dew dagger had been too demanding on Huo Yuhao's body. Now, he was left with less than 20% of his original soul power. Many of his bodily functions were also slightly damaged. Nonetheless, he continued to stand there as he stared down the people from the Sun Moon Empire with cold eyes. At the same time, Huo Yuhao was trying his best to activate his yin-yang complement soul cores to recover his soul power. He was definitely going to fight on no matter what. After all, he still had his invincible spiritual power and Huo Yuhao began to chant his incantations in a low and deep voice. Under the influence of his imitation and his spiritual interference domain, no one could hear his incantations nor sensed what he was doing. Juzi took a deep breath before letting it out. She was no longer able to make decisions as the commander of the three armies. The strength Huo Yuhao had demonstrated was extremely suffocating. How? What should I do next? The usually quick-witted Juzi found her mind completely blank. While she was not willing to see Huo Yuhao die, she knew that if the Sun Moon Empire were to lose this challenge, the entire army's morale would take a huge hit. Everything she had done prior to this would go down the drain. Let me do it. A loud exclamation rang out from beside her. Elder Su, who had been standing next to Juzi, strode out to face Huo Yuhao. Juzi opened her mouth and wanted to stop him. However, no words escaped her. Even though she did not want to put Huo Yuhao's life in danger, she knew that she could not allow the morale of the army to be shaken. As Elder Su slowly walked towards the center of the battlefield, the various soul tools he had brought with him started to appear. The people who were watching the battle could hear the crisp metallic sounds as Elder Su's human-shaped soul tool started to form on his body. As Huo Yuhao stared at Elder Su, the pupils in his eyes contracted. He was able to tell from today's battles that the Sun Moon Empire must have mastered the core technology used to build human-shaped soul tools. In addition, they must have developed a certain method to use these human-shaped soul tools. Xian Ziwen's research had shown that one needed significant spiritual power in order to exercise the precise control needed for a human-shaped soul tool to fit perfectly with one's body. It was important to note that the stronger the human-shaped soul tool was, the more spiritual power it consumed. Without superior spiritual power, it would be next to impossible to control a human-shaped soul tool like one's limbs. Huo Yuhao did not find it strange that these Class 9 soul engineers had their own human-shaped soul tools. He was more interested to find out how the other soul engineers within the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineer Legion were able to use human-shaped soul tools. They must have used some sort of special method in order to achieve that. You are very powerful. I am very impressed with what you have achieved at such a tender age. I must say you are the most gifted soul master I have ever seen in my life. Unfortunately, we serve different masters. Whatever strength and power you possess will only become a greater justification for us to kill you. I promise I will destroy you at all costs. Elder Su said solemnly. Huo Yuhao stared calmly at him and said, "Then let's begin." A huge black gate suddenly formed behind him, following which, a massive body emerged after releasing a deafening howl. It was none other than the Jiangshi Ice Bear King, Bai. Now that Huo Yuhao was facing his seventh opponent, he could not help but call for reinforcements. Huo Yuhao leapt upward before landing on Bai's shoulder. Following which, he sat cross-legged his shoulder as though he were glued there. Bai looked up into the sky before releasing another deafening howl as it started to stomp towards Elder Su. Elder Su revealed a condescending look. It was important to note that he was not a close combat soul engineer, but one who specialized in ranged attacks. Even though Bai was humongous and radiated an intensely powerful aura, it was nothing more than a clumsy target in Elder Su's eyes. Two red cannons appeared on the shoulder plates of his human-shaped soul tool. Those two cannons were not very big, but they instantly released two red soul rays towards Bai. When a soul engineer became a Class 9 soul engineer, the power of their soul tools could no longer be measured by their size. Because Bai was so big, it was an easy target even if Elder Su did not aim properly. However, an unexpected outcome formed before everyone's eyes. Just when the two rays were about to land on Bai charged forward, and suddenly angled his body in an agile manner. In fact, it even pushed itself off the ground with the tips of its feet to avoid the two rays. Huh! Elder Su's eyes widened in disbelief. After all, he had only launched his soul rays after he had locked his cannons onto Bai. How was it able to avoid the rays? Spiritual interference domain and spiritual detection sharing. That was the answer. It was Huo Yuhao's answer to the challenge Elder Su had given. While Elder Su was hesitating, Bai had gotten extremely close to him. It waved its humongous fist and planted it in Elder Su's direction. Its overwhelming aura caused the surrounding ground to sink even before its fist came into contact with it. Elder Su instantly retreated rapidly in a bid to evade Bai's attack, as two streaks of light were released from the bottom of his feet. Bai looked up into the sky as it released another low growl. It opened its mouth as its white smoky breath surged out at Elder Su. A huge circular gem that was attached at the front of Elder Su's human-shaped soul tool suddenly emitted a powerful beam of light. The beam instantly went past the breath Bai had released and landed on Bai's body. Even with the help of Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection sharing, Bai was simply too big and too close to avoid this attack. Hence, it could only use its strong chest to take this blow. Because of the powerful speed his human-shaped soul tool had given him, Elder Su was able to instantly retreat and avoid Bai's breath after releasing his attack. This allowed him to widen the distance between him and Bai. However, he was shocked to see that Bai was able to shake off any effect the beam had on its body. Following which, it continued to charge towards Elder Su. How is this possible? That was a Class 8 gold melting cannon. It was important to note that even a Class 9 soul engineer was not able to only possess Class 9 soul tools. This was because it was incredibly difficult to build Class 9 soul tools. On top of that, it often took too much time to build them. Tools like milk bottles were a lot less useful for soul engineers of higher classes. They simply did not have the time to replenish what they had expended. At the end of the day, one soul core was still the most reliable source of soul power. Hence, it was extremely logical to see powerful soul engineers equip themselves with soul tools of different classes. Even though the gold melting cannon was only a Class 8 soul tool, it was able to melt gold and any other similar metals. On top of that, it was focused on a single target. Hence, it was extremely powerful. However, it only left a faint black mark on the gigantic bear's body. It didn't seem like it had managed to cause much harm to Bai. At that end of the day, there was still a difference between Bai and Little Bai. Little Bai was a powerful controller of ice and snow. Even though Bai had inherited Little Bai's body, it did not inherit Little Bai's ability to control ice and snow. Or rather, Bai only possessed a tiny bit of control over snow and ice. However, Bai also had its very own advantage, its immensely tough body. After becoming a spectral creature within the spectral demiplane, its body was affected by the aura within it, and had mutated. It definitely possessed the strongest body within the entire spectral demiplane. If not, it would never have become the king of the entire spectral demiplane. Hence, it was extremely difficult for a Class 8 soul tool to harm Bai. On top of that, the gold melting cannon was a fire-type soul tool. It was natural for its effect to be weaker on Bai, who was an ice-type spectral creature. Bai stomped its left foot on the ground as it sent tremors and vibrations across the earth around it. As the earth trembled, everyone, including the Sun Moon Empire troops, who were about 5 kilometers away, found the ground beneath them shaking and vibrating. By borrowing the reactive force from its stomp, Bai leapt into the air before rolling itself into a ball. Following which, it flew towards Elder Su like a massive rotating cannonball. The aura it possessed was similar to that of an icy meteor falling from the sky. This was the only ice ability Little Bai had passed on to Bai. Even though its ultimate ice ability was lacking compared to Little Bai's, Bai's physical power was definitely more powerful than what little Bai could achieve. After recovering from his momentary shock, Elder Su immediately regained the speed he had lost. To be honest, he was not in the least bit scared of Bai. After all, speed was his specialty. On top of that, his Class 9 human-shaped soul tool was able to prevent him from being locked on by his opponent. This meant that Bai would never be able to lock onto his position. With a single flicker, Elder Su was able to maneuver his body and avoid Bai's attack. At the same time, a matte black Class 9 soul cannon appeared on his shoulder. Since the Class 8 soul tool was not enough to take Bai down, Elder Su had decided to go with a Class 9 one. This time around, he also made sure to choose one which was not fire type. Attacking power had never been a problem for any Class 9 soul engineer. However, just when Elder Su had finally locked onto Bai's position and fully charged his Class 9 soul cannon, his spiritual C suddenly alerted him of an impending threat. This was an instinct which only titled Doluo possessed. Elder Su was extremely trusting of his senses. This was because they had saved his life countless times. Without hesitating, he immediately stopped charging the soul tool on his shoulder, as he flipped around and revved up his human-shaped soul tool in a bid to escape from whatever that was coming for him. A blue light suddenly flickered in the sky as Elder Su's rapid flipping motion suddenly froze. Following which, his body suddenly released a huge blood mist. If one were to pay close attention to Elder Su, one would notice a single hole in his Class 9 protective soul barrier, invincible barrier, and human-shaped soul tool which all lined up. Even though the hole was not very big, it was sufficient for it to be fatal. This was because they had all appeared at Elder Su's head. Boom! Bai's massive body landed onto the ground. Following which, a figure gradually appeared on its shoulder. He was none other than Huo Yuhao. However, Huo Yuhao was no longer sitting down and meditating on its shoulder. He was now standing on Bai's shoulder. A streak of blue light made a parabolic path in the air before returning to his original position. Elder Su's dead body fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. There was no longer any reaction from him. It had ended. The 7th battle had ended just like this. Another Class 9 soul engineer had fallen. However, no one knew why and how Elder Su had fallen. Huo Yuhao's body was swaying from left to right, but he grabbed Bai's head and managed to steady himself. Following which, he sat back down on Bai's shoulder. This time, he did not push the Sun Moon Empire for their next representative like before. Instead, he quietly sat down cross-legged. Juzi's face had turned very pale. From the beginning until now, the gigantic ice bear had just been a decoy. It was a decoy that had attracted Elder Su's attention. Huo Yuhao was still the one who dealt the final blow. This video will end here.